Day of Atonement is the most solemn of Israelite commemorations. It is the holiest day of the year, a sacred fast. The phrase "afflict your souls" in Leviticus 23:27 was interpreted to mean complete fasting. If commemorated with full purpose of heart, the people of Israel were restored to a state of full fellowship with God. The Hebrew word kippur derives from kapar, which means to cover. In this commemoration, we see most clearly the typology or symbolism of Christ's work to cover the sins of his people. Certain restrictions regarding Aaron's entry into the Holy of Holies and instructions about the holy garments he should wear were given in preparation for the Day of Atonement. The special garments of the priesthood included linen underclothing, breeches, a robe, coat, sash, girdle, and a cap, mitre. This teaches us an important pattern we still follow to this day. A special change of clothing is required for the most sacred times of worship. On the annual Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, the people sought forgiveness of sins for which they had repented. The sins were put upon the head of a scapegoat, which was an actual goat, which was then driven out into the wilderness, symbolically bearing away their sins. The term scapegoat is substituted for the peculiar Hebrew word azazel, which apparently designates the adversary of the righteous one. On the calendar, Yom Kippur falls near the solemn celebration of Rosh Hashanah, which is New Year's Day, and comes just before the week of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, and Simchat Torah, which is rejoicing in the law. Of course, since the destruction of the temple in AD 70, animal sacrifice has not been a part of any of these observances. These practices were highly symbolic. Verse 17 mentions that only one man alone can enter the Holy of Holies, just as Jesus accomplished the atonement alone in Gethsemane and on the cross. Also, verse 30 explains that the priest made an atonement to cleanse the people. However, the ritual that the priest performed did not actually cleanse them any more than a piece of bread or a cup of water cleanses us. It is the repentance that accompanies the ordinance, in concert with God's power to forgive and make pure, that cleanses. The high priest, who was Aaron at the time, had to go through meticulous preparation to be worthy to act as the officiator for the rest of the house of Israel. This included sacrifices for himself and his house, as well as the washing and purification through the sprinkling of sacrificial blood on various objects in the tabernacle. 2 goats were needed for the Day of Atonement, and they were chosen by casting lots. One was designated as the goat of the Lord, and one was designated as the scapegoat, or in Hebrew, the goat of Azazel. The goat of Jehovah, or the goat of the Lord, was offered as a sin offering, and the high priest took its blood into the Holy of Holies and of the tabernacle and sprinkled it on the lid of the Ark of the Covenant, which was called the mercy seat, thus making atonement for the sins of Israel. The second goat, Azazel, was brought before the high priest, who laid his hands upon its head and symbolically transferred all of the sins of Israel to it. Then it was taken out into the wilderness and released where it would never be seen again. One commentator explained the significance of Azazel by saying that it represented the devil himself, the head of the fallen angels, who was afterwards called Satan, for no subordinate evil spirit could have been placed in antithesis to Jehovah as Azazel is here, but only the ruler or the head of the kingdom of demons. James E. Talmage said, "The sacred writings of ancient times, the inspired utterances of latter-day prophets, the traditions of mankind, the rites of sacrifice, and even the sacrileges of heathen idolatries, all involve the idea of vicarious atonement. God has never refused to accept an offering made by one who is authorized on behalf of those who are in any way incapable of doing the required service themselves. The scapegoat and the altar victim of ancient Israel, if offered with repentance and contrition, were accepted by the Lord in mitigation of the sins of the people."